Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Naked Facilitator. Today, I'm speaking with Annika Madejska. And what are we going to talk about, Anika?
We're going to talk about how you facilitate people to do evil, and specifically, I guess, evil technology in this setting.
Yes. And my first question when I hear this title, Facilitating Evil, why would you want to facilitate evil?
So in the tech business, we are very good at being excited about all of the marvelous things that technology can do for us and what it can solve for us. But one thing that we're chronically bad at is to do forecasting about how these technologies can be misused by nefarious intent. People that simply want to use the technology for completely different reasons than we intended when we created it.
Yeah. And so this is a workshop that you've run before. You've kind of guided people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've done it here at my company at the consultancy where I work with my colleagues, because triggering that ethical thinking can be quite hard. So while I was studying actually digital design, I had a course in speculative design. Speculative design is basically a kind of an art form. You use design as a tool for commenting on current topics, for instance. And that gave me the idea that this could also be used as a tool for forecasting about technology and what it could possibly be used for, and also trigger that ethical thinking by putting yourself in the position of somebody with evil intent. So yeah, we did a whole full one-day workshop here. I've also run smaller subsets of this in other settings. But it was so much fun. And it actually turned out really, really great. And my colleagues came back and a few weeks later and told me that it actually has changed their thinking in their daily job, which is amazing. So I'm very happy to see that it had such a result. And now we are refining this workshop and going to try out another batch of evildoers now during the spring and see what we can come up with in terms of new briefs to tackle.
And I'm thinking of the workshop itself. Is it a very playful workshop? Because if most of us wouldn't call ourselves an evil person or an evil overlord with nefarious intent. I can imagine you show up at a day workshop. You're like, okay, welcome to the workshop. Everyone's going to be evil for the day.
Yeah, it kind of started like that. It is a bit odd for some people. It is very uncomfortable. It also, of course, depends a lot about what topic you choose. So when I've run this workshop, I've created briefs. For instance, in Denmark, so the Nordic countries have very, very kind of all-encompassing data about all of the citizens. And that data is very, very guarded and protected, of course, by the authorities. You can do lots of evil with it. But researchers can use it. And in Denmark, researchers actually used this data to train an algorithm that pretty much can predict your death.
Wow.
Yes. So I utilized that and created a thought experiment and gave them a brief about, so what would an application look like that is created by the government that is, its intent is to get you as a citizen of the country to make better choices in your life, because that then in turn costs less for society.
Yes. Yeah.
So, because one of the things with evil is really that often it's rooted in good intent, and then it kind of derails along the way. So there was some good intent in this to get you to make better choices.
Sure.
But then throughout the workshop, they entered that slippery slope. And even though it was kind of uncomfortable for some in the beginning, quite a lot of them also admitted at the end of the day, when we had demos of all of the things they created, they admitted that it was fun to do evil. Yeah. And it was very easy once you got started. Which kind of also feeds into the whole thing of how we make choices, and one choice, once we cross one line, it gets easier to cross another one. Yes. And this was all for fun and games. But of course, they could see that. They could see that crossing one line made it easier to cross the next and think of yet another one that they could cross.
Yeah.
So they had lots of fun with it.
There's also kind of like this bubble where there's no consequences after the day, right? Like
no accountability.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you mentioned that it was hard for some people. What did it look like in terms of, like somebody who's resistant to changing their...
No, it was actually one group that decided to work with, usually what happens with briefs is that they derail as well. They take a part of the brief and then they go with that.
Yeah.
And one of the things they also picked up was the low nativity in Finland, for instance, where we live and operate. So they were like, oh, so what could the government do with incentives for people to have more babies? And they came up with this absolutely horrific concept of how they could utilize influencers in social media to make teen pregnancies cool.
Ooh.
And since some of them have kids, or I think actually all of them in that group had kids, it kind of became super uncomfortable to think of their own children in this kind of a setting, and if their own children would be faced with this kind of message in social media.
Of course.
Yeah. So of course, I mean, there is always that that barrier of being able to look at something from afar and not really react that strongly because it doesn't really touch me.
Of course.
But as soon as it becomes close and personal, and you can imagine people you love in that situation, then that's usually when people get a bit uncomfortable.
And when you notice that, do people typically like pull back the intensity of their evil? It
can happen. It can also be that they just need a moment. They just need to talk about it, laugh a little bit about it. And then they too cross the line and it gets easier. But we haven't dealt with any super difficult topics in this. I've done speculative design projects myself that were making me so uncomfortable, feel so horrible, that I literally had to step away from my computer and kind of felt like, I hope nobody ever finds out that I did this. Because I decided to dive into the horrible, horrible swamp of what would happen if things that are currently on the darknet would actually become legal through a process of normalization.
Okay.
And it's really, really interesting to kind of play around in these areas. One of the things that I also try to facilitate them to is to consider words, because words carry so much power in these places, because you can make something that sounds absolutely horrid and evil sound so much better by just changing the words. And I mean, this is also something that many, for instance, right-wing extreme right-wing groups do. They use words that sound far less dangerous for things that are really dangerous.
Yes.
And we as white people, we like to call ourselves expats. I mean, I'm Swedish. I live in Finland. I'm an expat. But if I would have had a different color of skin, it is so much easier to call me an immigrant.
Yeah.
Which has a completely different connotation in the word. So that is one of the things also that is very, very helpful in doing speculative design and doing evil, to facilitate the like how you can twist words into sounding so much better and so much normal.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. And so if somebody, because I can imagine that not everybody listening is dealing with like ethics of the digital ethics and things like this, but whatever topic they're dealing with, they can flip it to the extreme, right? Instead of
anything.
How do we make fake digital products would then become we make super evil. So what tips or advice would you give to someone if they want to facilitate on the extreme side of things?
So one really, really powerful thing to do is to, let's say you're working on a product in your everyday work, but you want to flip things and start thinking differently. I bet people who are working on a product or on a service know pretty much what kind of a service they want to create. So what if you flip it? What don't you want your service to be? And start listing that. What is it that you want to avoid? What is it that you don't want to happen? That is one trick. Another trick is actually to start with world building. If you want to flip things, what would the world look like? What would society look like if this product, this evil product existed? What would need to be in place in such a society?
Okay.
What kind of government would it have? What kind of laws would it have? Would it have social media? How would that social media work? So on and so forth. And world building has become so much easier thanks to generative AI. You can use generative AI to create images that spark other ideas. You can use generative AI with text tools just to chat things through and utilize the AI to help you create the world. So, and you can do that pretty fast. And that's actually one of the things that I set people out to do the first thing they get to do after they've got them briefs in my evil workshop. That is that they get to do some world building, some classical science fiction, techno-fiction kind of, world building.
And it's funny to see that because I walked in to the office and a colleague of mine had this look like a child on Christmas, right? Like just so excited at his laptop, right? Colleagues aren't normally this excited to look at their laptops. It's like, what is going on? He goes, I'm building a character because he plays Dungeons and Dragons. So they're very much into world building and creating characters. And he goes, I have to create a new character. So I asked AI to help me. Come look at how incredible this is. I have a wife and 2 kids, and this is my story. And
it's amazing, and you can do it really fast. I know that to some it might sound odd that a digital assistant sits here and talks about these generative AI tools in these positive terms, because there are a lot of issues with them. But there are things that they are useful for. And this is one of them. They can help us trigger that ethical thinking, actually.
Yeah. And I would have never thought of world building to connect with that, because I can imagine that also really immerses the participants in the realm of,
because you evil things don't just pop up out of nothing. There has to be a certain environment for such a thing to thrive.
Yes.
And you need to kind of get a clear picture of what that is. And the closer it is to our current reality, the better it is and more powerful it becomes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in these days, we don't have to, go that far to actually get some ideas of a few laws we could change, or a few, presidential orders that we could just rip up for things to go south.
Yeah.
But really, and taking help from dystopian TV series or books, that's great. I mean, a lot of the technology that we are creating kind of also comes from wanting to expand into those worlds that we've seen through science fiction. So we can utilize those also to imagine all of those horrible, horrible things that we could possibly do. But the really cool thing is that at the end of the day, when you reflect back on it, to really look at what you've done and bring that with you into your future work.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen and heard from the colleagues of mine that have taken part, unfortunately, there are also lots of people out there in the world that I haven't reconnected with since they ran one of my little exercises. But from my colleagues, I've understood that it actually has triggered that ethical thinking, that questioning, that, okay, if we implement this feature, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. And I would have, and we're out of time, which is one of the downsides of this very short form. But it is really cool to hear that flipping thinking can come from being evil for the day. Thank you so much.
Use it for reflection.
Yes, reflect.
Thank you for inviting me.